Okay. So we're going to look at some of our tools for painting. This is a palette. What is it for?
Putting paint in.
Holding paint. Very good. This is a palette knife. You use it to scoop the paint. Some of you remember from your stations. It comes in different shapes and sizes. These are the 3 that I have available to you. You'll have to play with them and decide which ones you want. And then there are different paintbrushes, all different sizes and different quality. For instance, this paintbrush is a sad paintbrush. Look what has happened to it. It's all stiff and broken and nasty.
Aww.
Yes, you should be kind. See, it's so sad. How does this happen? If you leave the paint dry, if you don't take care of it. So we've got to avoid that. So part of how we avoid that is by using our palette knives. So anytime we're going to paint, you're going to use a palette knife to scoop the paint into the palette. You are not going to use the brush for this. This is going to help save the brush. It's also going to help save your paint because you're going to have 1 cup of each color per table. So you don't want somebody else dipping their paintbrush with a different color into the paint and ruining your black paint, right? That would be bad. So after you've got some of the one color, if you need another color, what do?
Wipe off the palette.
You are going to need to wipe it off. I have rags that have been donated from various friends and family members. This is what we'll have to use unless you guys bring in paper towels. Paper towels would be easier because these will dry up over time and get kind of harder to use, but it's what we got for now, so it's okay. So we're going to wipe it off, make sure it's nice and clean, and then I'll get out my other color. Always make sure I've got the lid on the paint cup anytime. If you're carrying it up to the front to get more paint, the lid needs to be on it as well. We don't want paint to spill because we have carpet in here. And what's going to happen when paint gets on carpet? It's not coming out. And that would be bad. And I'll remember your name forever as the person who spilled the big green splotch of paint on the wall back there.
How did it get on the wall?
They're a very talented person.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's very talented. Okay. So when you're using acrylic paint, you are going to want to have a little bit of water on your brush. You don't need to necessarily dunk it in the water over and over and over again. You don't want to smash it around. That's going to hurt the brush too. But a little bit of water, if your brush is damp, that's going to help the paint flow more smoothly on your paper. Paintbrushes need to be treated gently. You're not going to get anything different if you smash the paintbrush down. Like if you're using a pencil, it gets darker. That doesn't happen with paint. So be gentle with the paintbrushes. If you smash the paintbrush down, all you're going to do is break the paintbrush. Over time, if I smash it, look, do you guys see what's happening to the bristles there?
Yep, bending.
They're bending out, they're splaying out over here off to the side. Over time, that's part of what ruins paintbrushes. Once the paint is on your palette, it is your paint. So if you want to contaminate your colors, you are welcome to do so. If you want to, like, oh, I need a little bit of white when I had black on it, that's okay, it's your paint. What you won't do is actually mix the paint with your brush. The reason why is going back to protecting our paintbrushes. You don't want paint to get higher than halfway up on the bristles. So on these it would be about here. On these little brushes, that'd be only about, use the tip of it. You just want to paint a little way up. If your paint gets too high up on the bristles, it's harder to get out, and then it'll dry in there, and it'll force the bristles apart. You guys have seen paintbrushes that the bristles are all splayed out like this? All nasty like that and everywhere. That's because paint got too far up into the bristles and then dried. So to make sure we don't do that, we're going to mix paint with a palette knife. See, I mixed up my paint a little bit. Oh well. when I'm painting with acrylic paint, I can use different amounts of water. I can put wet paint next to wet paint. See what happens? The paint starts to blend together. What am I doing wrong?
You dipped your paintbrush in the.
You put it over the.
It's too much paint. It's too much paint. It's more than halfway up. So if I do that, what do I need to do? I need to get it off as soon as I can, right? See? Now it's all nice and clean again. No harm, no foul. Okay. What we are going to be doing with paint as our first adventure is trying to create a value scale. For a value scale, you're trying to show from white to black and everything in between. So this value I have here is probably about the middle of a value scale. So I could go ahead and put that down. What am I going to do to make it lighter? I'm going to try to add some more white. What am I going to do to make it darker? Add more black. See, this is not too hard, is it? No. We can do this, right?
Yes.
Now, what if you decide that you don't like it?
Kill it with fire.
You know this is going on YouTube, right?
Okay.
Okay. So, is there another option besides fire? Because that's not allowed.
Get a new sheet.
More wire
Get
on
another
the
sheet.
paintbrush.
And add white to the cover section.
Could you wipe it off?
Could we wipe it off?
No,
It's not going to come all the way off.
you just time it off.
What is going to happen is it's going to dry. And once it dries, what can we do?
Nothing.
We can paint over it. It's gone. The mistake is gone.
Yay.
Well, it's easier fixed now. Yay. So, the worst possible thing that can happen with paint is that you have to let something dry and paint over it. Is that the end of the world?
No.
You may feel like it occasionally when you've worked really, really, really hard on it, but it's not the end of the world. It'll be okay. So, I'm done painting for today. What do I do?
You clean up.
I need to clean my brushes. So the first thing I'm going to do is clean out my brushes as well as I can in my can of water at my table. Go ahead and wipe it off. Make sure it's as clean as you can get it. This is going to make the next step easier because the next step is you're going to have to come over to the sink. Now this is not a running water sink, it's a pump sink. It's what we have available, and it's much better than what we used to have, but this is how you're going to have to use it. There will be a can of soapy water available for rinsing out your brushes first. So you will swish the brushes around in the soapy water, and then you will rinse them in the clear water. This is usually easier if you get somebody to help you, and you take turns pumping the water because then you can go through the bristles and make sure everything's out. Notice you have to keep pumping the water. If you just pull the handle once, it doesn't keep coming. Okay, so you are going to have to pump it. You can tell if your brushes are clean when you wipe them off on a white rag. Do you see any paint? I know the lighting's bad, but there's no paint on them, so it's clean. So now what am I going to do?
Put your utensils back in place.
I'm going to put everything away. So you're going to have a color-coded tray. You're going to eventually have your own palette. Make sure the lid is on the palette. And then everything goes in the tray, and the tray goes back under the sink.